The sun was low over Maple Avenue, bathing the street in golden haze. Everything, from a distance, was tranquil. Neatly manicured lawns, white picket fences, and the soft hush of a small American neighborhood at dusk. But beneath that calm, behind one cracked sidewalk and a chipped white porch, the silence broke, shattered by a sound so fragile it almost blended with the wind. Before them stood a little boy, clutching at a worn-out teddy bear. His eyes were red, his cheeks streaked with tears, and his small voice was shaking as it escaped him. "He hit my grandma," he whispered. Those words carried enough pain to tear through the calm of the world. If you believe no child should ever cry out of fear, if you still believe in kindness, courage, and the power of compassion, take just one moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Real Kindness Stories, where we remind the world that empathy is the strongest kind of strength. The boy's name was Ethan, just 6 years old. His grey hoodie was streaked with dust and dirt from where he'd tumbled running down the steps, while behind him, on the porch, sat his grandmother, Clara Frail, trembling, her soft blue dress torn at the shoulder. A dark bruise had begun to spread across her cheek. She tried to hold herself together for Ethan's sake, but she couldn't hide the pain, not from him, and not from the world. Standing in the doorway behind her was a man, Ray, tall and red-faced, half drunk, a beer bottle dangling carelessly from his hand. He stared at the boy, as if he'd spoken a forbidden truth. He wasn't family, just someone who'd promised to help out after Clara's husband had died, but help was the last thing he brought. Ray brought control, anger, and fear into a home that had already lost too much. That afternoon, Ethan had run barefoot from the house, clutching the teddy bear his grandmother had sewn for him when life was kinder. He didn't know where to go, only that someone had to help. His small feet slapped against the pavement while tears splashed onto the concrete. And then came the paradigm shift. A low rumble echoed from the distance, a deep thunderous growl that rolled through the still air like an approaching storm. 6 motorbikes turned the corner, chrome glinting under the setting sun, engines roaring like thunder as they slowed to a halt in front of Clara's house. At their lead was a man impossible to miss. Tall, broad-shouldered, his salt and pepper beard streaked with time and experience, his tattooed arms marked with old scars that told stories of battles long past. Across the back of his black leather vest, stitched in bold letters, were the words Hell's Angel. Beneath it, a smaller patch read RLCHLS. His name was Reed, a man whose presence could silence chaos. He had that calm, which only comes from surviving storms most men never walk out of. The moment Reed saw the little boy crying by the steps, he cut the engine, swung his leg off the bike, and knelt beside him. His gravelly voice came out low and steady, carrying both warmth and weight. "Hey buddy, what happened?" Ethan didn't say a word. He simply pointed toward the porch, toward his trembling grandmother sitting helplessly on the step, and the man towering over her with a bottle still in his hand. Reed's jaw clenched. Something flickered inside of him, a familiar ache from a long ago time. He had seen this before. He had lived it before, when he was small and powerless. But now he wasn't small anymore, and no one, not while he was standing there, was going to make a child cry like that again. Reed rose slowly, his eyes never leaving the man on the porch. Behind him, his crew stood like a silent wall. 5 men in black vests, steady and unmoving, their faces hard and unreadable. Curtains shifted across the street. Front doors cracked open. The neighborhood was watching. Something was about to happen, something which Maple Avenue would never forget. The air around Maple Avenue was different. Everyone could feel it, that quiet, electric tension before something inevitable happened. Ray straightened, trying to hold on to his swagger, but his confidence flickered, caught somewhere between arrogance and fear. "This ain't your business," he muttered, the shake in his voice just enough to betray him. Reed didn't flinch. He just walked forward, calm, steady, unstoppable. Sunlight glinted off the chrome on his vest as he stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at the man. "It became my business," he said softly, his tone like iron wrapped in warmth. "The moment I heard a child say those words." Ray's hand trembled. The beer bottle dipped lower in his grasp. For one quick second, his eyes darted from Clara, the woman whose kindness he had crushed, to Ethan, the boy who had run barefoot into the street searching for help. His lips parted, perhaps to make an excuse, but no sound came out, for right in front of him stood the truth, not in words, but in presence. A line of men who had once been broken themselves, but had rebuilt into something unshakable shields for those who couldn't fight back. Behind Reed, Ethan stood quietly, still clutching his teddy bear, watching the man who had hurt his grandmother shrink for the very first time. Reed didn't have to yell. He didn't have to raise a hand. The weight of what he stood for, justice, brotherhood, and compassion, did the talking for him. Reed leaned in closer, his tone calm, yet sharp as a razor that cut through Ray's last shred of pride. "She does not need your help anymore," he said with finality. "Get your things together. You're done here." Ray stumbled backward one step, then another. No one moved to stop him. No one needed to. The silence alone was judgment enough. In a moment, he had vanished into the house, snatched up his keys, and took off. The truck's engine faded into a distance that finally felt like peace. Reed turned to Clara once more. Again, he knelt beside her, the roughness gone from his face. She attempted a smile, but her lips only quivered. "You really didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Mom?" Reed interrupted softly, his tone low but sure. "No one should ever have to live scared. Not you. Not him." His voice cracked slightly as he glanced toward Ethan. Behind him, his crew moved quietly into action. One handed Clara a bottle of water, another pulled out a small first aid kit. The neighbors watched from their porches, stunned. The world often called these men dangerous, but in that moment, they were the proof that real strength is kindness, that refuses to look away. They called for help, checked on Clara, and stayed on till they knew she was safe. When the ambulance finally came, Reed didn't leave. He sat beside Ethan on the porch steps, talking softly as the sky turned amber with the setting sun. The boy finally smiled, small, fragile, but real. As the paramedics lifted Clara into the ambulance, Ethan ran to Reed, wrapping his little arms around the biker's arm, his teddy bear squished between them. "Thank you," he whispered. Reed looked down and merely nodded, the corners of his eyes tightening. That kind of silence that says more than words ever could. As the ambulance pulled away, the bikers mounted their motorcycles once more. But before Reed started his engine, he looked back at the house, at the little boy waving from the porch, at the grandmother now safe inside. He did not say it out loud, but the thought burned clear in his chest. Sometimes, the loudest acts of kindness come from the ones the world least expects. He revved his bike once, the deep roar echoing down Maple Avenue, not as a threat, but as a promise that kindness still rides where it's needed most. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that strength and compassion can come from the unlikeliest people, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Real Kindness Stories. Before you leave, comment below. If you heard a child cry out those words, what would you have done? Because sometimes one person's courage can change everything.